Let's start with something nobody wants to talk about at family dinners. You know that awkward silence when someone accidentally mentions retirement and everyone suddenly starts studying the contents of their plates with great focus? That's exactly what we're going to talk about today. Because the elephant in the room has grown so large that it's about to push all the furniture out. There's something strange about pension systems. Everyone understands they're cracking at the seams, but no one wants to say it out loud. It's like staring at a crack in the wall that keeps getting bigger every day while pretending everything is fine. You know, maybe it'll heal itself. Or maybe it's just the way the shadows fall. Well, it won't heal. And it's not the shadows. Imagine this. In 1960, for every one retiree in the United States, there were 5.1 working people. 5 people chipping in to support one person in old age. That sounds pretty manageable, right? Everyone pays a little and the system works. By 2009, that number had fallen to 3. You could already feel the strain, but it was still tolerable. And by 2030, that is just 4 years from now, not some distant future, there will be only 2.1 workers per retiree. Let that sink in. 2 people, 2 living, working, tax-paying people will be expected to support one retiree. At the same time, those same 2 people still need to pay for housing, raise children, save for their own retirement, cover medical bills, and on top of that, carry someone else's grandmother from Florida on their backs. And this is not abstract statistics. These are real people, your children, your grandchildren, possibly you yourself if you are in your 30s or 40s right now. Now, here's where it gets really interesting. The multi-tier pension system in the United States has more than a 90% probability of becoming insolvent by 2025. 90%. And a 99% probability by 2026. I will give you a second to process that. That means right now, this year, not someday later when flying cars exist and Mars has been colonized. Now, while you are reading this is not some distant future threat meant to scare grandchildren. It is happening in front of our eyes. And most people have no idea because who actually reads actuarial reports on the weekend? You know what is really scary? The official numbers are the optimistic version. The real problems come later. According to the Equitable Institute, state and local pension plans in the United States have promised to pay out $6.3 trillion. A solid number. Sounds impressive. Except they only have $4.9 trillion in assets. That leaves a shortfall of $1.4 trillion. $1.4 trillion are simply missing. Gone. Evaporated. Turned into a pumpkin. To understand the scale, that is roughly equivalent to Australia's annual GDP. It just vanished. Oops. But wait, this is not even the bottom. Using more conservative accounting assumptions, not rose-colored glasses, but realistic math, the real shortfall exceeds $2 trillion. And that does not include retiree healthcare benefits, which add another $530 billion to $1 trillion on top. The total? Potentially $3 trillion in debt. 3 trillion? That is larger than the entire economy of the United Kingdom. It is as if a whole country, the 5th largest economy in the world, simply disappeared, leaving behind nothing but a debt note saying, "We'll figure it out later." Let us be honest. Pension systems were designed for a completely different era, for a world that no longer exists. In the 1960s, people spent 5 to 8 years in retirement. You worked for 40 years, retired, went fishing for a couple of years, bounced your grandkids on your knee, and that was it. Curtain. The system was built for a short payout period after a long working life. Today, Americans live 8 to 11 years longer in retirement. In Japan, it is a full 16 years longer. People retire at 65 and live to 85, 90, sometimes even longer. 20 to 30 years in retirement is now normal, and that is wonderful. A long life is a gift. Medicine works miracles, and we should be happy that grandparents stay with us longer. The problem is that the pension system was built on the assumption that they would not. On top of that, birth rates are falling. The number of workers is shrinking. Baby boomers are retiring in entire generations. Fewer workers, more retirees, and retirees living longer adds up to one thing: a mathematical catastrophe, an equation with no solution. So, we've dealt with the basic arithmetic. It doesn't add up, and that was already obvious about 30 years ago. But what do the people who run pension funds do when they see an iceberg coming straight at them? The correct answer is they take out some paint and draw palm trees on the iceberg so it looks like a tropical island. Now for the most cynical part. Do you know how pension funds show that everything is fine? They use what's called aggressive discounting. It sounds like something from a finance textbook, but in reality, it's legalized self-deception. Here's how it works. When a fund promises to pay you a certain amount in 30 years, they have to calculate how much money needs to be in the fund today. And that's where the magic begins. They take a very optimistic expected return, say 7 or 8% per year, and say, well, If our investments grow at that rate, we don't need that much money right now. It is like taking out a $1 million loan, but writing in your paperwork that you only owe $500,000. Why? Well, I'm planning to win the lottery. And besides, my crypto is definitely going to the moon. California's CalPERS, the largest public pension fund in the United States and the flagship of the entire system, officially reported a funding level of 77%. 3/4 of obligations covered. Sounds pretty good, right? Except when you recalculate it using realistic assumptions, the real number was closer to 48%, less than half. Almost half of the promised money simply isn't there. And this is the biggest fund in the country. What's happening in smaller funds is terrifying to imagine. So what do pension fund managers do when they realize the money is catastrophically insufficient? They start gambling. Literally. From the mid-2000s through 2020, there was a clear shift away from safe fixed income assets like bonds and government securities toward much riskier instruments. Private equity, hedge funds, exotic real estate, venture investments in startups that can either skyrocket or go to zero. They start playing casino games with your retirement money in the financial markets. Why? Because safe investments give you 2 or 3% a year, but they need to show 7 or 8% for their glossy presentations to work. And the only way to get that kind of return is to take risk. It's like a doctor who sees a patient dying and instead of treating them decides to take them to Vegas and put all the money on red. Maybe it works. And if it doesn't, well, the end was near anyway. And you know what's completely insane? All of this is perfectly legal. More than that, it's standard practice. Research has shown something interesting. Pension boards with a higher share of political appointees and stronger unions systematically use more optimistic assumptions. Those same inflated discount rates that artificially reduce how bad the underfunding looks. Translated into plain language, the people sitting on pension boards are not independent experts who care only about math. They're politicians and union leaders who care about making things look good on paper. A politician needs to be reelected in 2 years. A union leader needs to show members that he negotiated great benefits. Neither of them benefits from saying, guys, there's no money, but hang in there. So they sit around the table and agree to use a 7.5% return assumption instead of a realistic 5%. Everyone is happy, everyone is smiling, everyone gets reelected, and 20 years later, when the bomb goes off, they'll already be long retired. Ironic, isn't it? Let's look at concrete examples so this doesn't sound abstract. New Jersey's pension plan was funded at just 29% in 2022. 29%. For every dollar of promised benefits, they have 29 cents. Where are the other 71 cents? Good question. The answer is, they don't exist. They never did. And Chicago? Oh, Chicago is a song of its own. The city faces pension obligations of more than $34 billion. And do you know how much of the city's budget that eats up? More than 80% of property taxes in Chicago go to pensions for former city employees. 80%. That means that out of every dollar paid by a homeowner or apartment owner, only 20 cents go to schools, roads, police, firefighters, parks, trash collection, to everything that actually makes a city a city. The rest goes to former employees. The city is literally suffocating. Infrastructure is falling apart. Schools are closing, crime is rising, and the money keeps flowing into the pension black hole. Here's another paradox that makes you want to bang your head against the wall. State and local governments paid a record amount into their pension systems in 2023. Just over 30% of public workers' salaries. Nearly a third of every paycheck goes to pensions. That's about $180 billion. In 2024, contribution rates rose even further to a bit over 31% of salaries. That's almost double what they paid before the 2008 financial crisis, when the rate was under 17%. So they doubled contributions in 15 years. You'd think the problem would be getting solved. But no. Despite record payments, unfunded liabilities have stayed above $1 trillion continuously since 2008. And the average funding ratio of pension plans stands at a fragile 80% as of June 2024. They're paying more than at any point in history. And the hole keeps growing anyway. It's like trying to empty the ocean with a teaspoon. You'll work harder and harder, but the water rises faster than you can scoop it out. Okay, we've talked about the numbers. We've talked about the tricks used to hide those numbers. Now let's talk about what comes next. And more importantly, what you personally should do about it. Do you think this is only an American problem? That you can just move to Europe and everything will be fine there? The World Economic Forum estimates that the global pension gap will grow to $400 trillion over the next 30 years. $400 trillion. That number is so large, it's hard to even comprehend. Let it put it this way. It's roughly 5 times bigger than the entire global economy, all countries combined. By the year 2050, the ratio of retirees to working-age people in the developed world will rise to 1 to 2, up from today's 1 to 3. Everywhere. In the United States, in Europe, in Japan, in Australia, Japan's pension obligations already exceed its GDP. The entire economy of the country is smaller than its pension debt. And Japan is not some banana republic. It's the third largest economy in the world. And here's another blow that very few people think about. A study by Ortec Finance shows that Canadian pension funds could see investment returns fall by 50% by 2040 if global temperatures rise by about 3.7 degrees Celsius. In severe scenarios, the drop could reach 60%. Why? Because pension funds are heavily invested in fossil fuels, in companies that will be hit by climate change, and in coastal real estate that will be flooded. When the climate crisis hits full force, and all signs suggest that it will, pension assets will evaporate. This is not an if, it's a when, and that when is getting closer. So even if, by some miracle, the demographic problem were solved, climate change would finish off what's left. Remember the mass protests in France in 2023? About 1.28 million people joined a nationwide strike against President Macron's plan to raise the retirement age from 62 to 64. From 62 to 64. 2 years. Over 2 years, millions took to the streets. Paris burned. The Eiffel Tower was closed. Garbage wasn't collected for weeks. The government argued that the changes were necessary to prevent the pension system from falling into deficit, to keep younger generations from carrying an unbearable burden. And you know what? Mathematically, they were absolutely right. But polls showed that more than 70% of the French population opposed the reform. 70% against obvious math. That's the problem. Math is unforgiving. 2 plus 2 equals 4, whether you like it or not. But politics requires popularity. And politicians prefer to kick the can down the road and leave the problem to the next generation. Here lies the real tragedy. Everyone knows what needs to be done. Economists, actuaries, financial experts have been saying the same thing for decades. Raise the retirement age, increase contributions, reduce benefits, or some combination of all three. But try doing that. Any attempt to raise the retirement age meets fierce resistance from voters. And here's what matters. A growing share of those voters is itself approaching retirement. And this group, people over 55, has the highest voter turnout. Young people? They don't vote, or they vote much less. They're busy working, raising kids, surviving. Politics isn't their priority. But retirees and near retirees do vote. They call their representatives. They organize campaigns. They are an electoral force no politician wants to confront. And as a result, policy outcomes increasingly tilt in their favor, even when that means their grandchildren will pay the price. Here's the reality no one wants to say out loud. I'll say it for them. For most people who are currently under 40 or 45, the state pension in the form promised to your parents will most likely never arrive. Or it will arrive so reduced that you won't be able to live on it. It won't be golden years by the ocean. It will be eating cheap pasta in a rented apartment. The system isn't broken because someone maliciously destroyed it, not because some villain stole the money. It's broken because it was built for a world that no longer exists, a world where people worked for 40 years and spent 5 to 8 years in retirement, a world with 5 workers for every retiree, a world where the economy grew faster than obligations. That world is gone, but the system remains. And now it's slowly but inevitably collapsing under the weight of its own promises. I know this all sounds depressing, like I showed up at a party and announced the house is on fire, but knowledge is power. And it's better to know the truth now than to discover it at 65, when it's already too late to change anything. First and most important, do not rely on Social Security as your main source of income in old age. If it exists, great, consider it a bonus. But build your plans as if it won't. Second, start saving now, not tomorrow, not after a raise, not after you pay off your car. Now. Compound interest only works if it has time. Every year you delay is money you lose. 401k plans, IRAs, Roth IRAs. Use every tool available to you. Maximize employer matching. That's literally free money. Third, diversify. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. Stocks, bonds, real estate, maybe a small amount of crypto if you understand the risks. Spread it out. Fourth, invest in your health. It won't just extend your life, it will allow you to work longer if you need to. And it will save you enormous medical costs later. Fifth, think in terms of multiple income streams. Rental property. Skills you can monetize. A side business. Don't rely on a single paycheck. You know what frustrates me the most about this whole situation? Not the numbers, not the scale of the problem, but the fact that we all pretend it doesn't exist. Politicians stay silent because they're afraid of voters. Pension funds paint pretty reports. The media prefers writing about scandals rather than demographics. And ordinary people live under the illusion that somehow it will all just work out. It won't. But this isn't the end of the world. People have lived for millennia without state pensions and somehow managed. We can manage too. We just need to stop relying on a system that's already broken and take responsibility for our own old age. The sooner you understand this and start taking action, the better your life will be in 20, 30, 40 years. Because if you're counting on a state pension as the foundation of your retirement, I have bad news for you. The system your parents relied on no longer works for you. And the sooner you accept that, the more time you'll have to build something of your own.